We have over 30 orchids in our house, and there are about 30 of them in our dining room and living room combined. So today we are going to show you how we take care of all of these. How do we water them all?
So yeah, getting ready to water the orchids that we have here. Quite a bit of things. First off, towels, because I always make a mess. Moisture meter, she uses more than I use, but it's something to poke around with if you're interested. Biggest thing of those, the saucers and the pots. I just have regular nursery pots, put some duct tape on them, seal them up. Don't really have to worry about that much anymore. Put a saucer underneath each one because duct tape doesn't actually fully seal. And I just got as many as I could find, as many as I could fit. I've got a stash of little pieces of wood and corks for afterwards when I dry stuff out. Kind of makes sense to me. But yeah, plot everything out, fill them up, put some orchids in them, fill them up. I normally let things soak for about 15 minutes. That's just me. I also only really water them every other week, so it tends to last. With the orchids, I don't really use the moisture meter much. I just go off weight, because when you pick it up and almost throw it over your shoulder, it's definitely time to water. One of these leaks badly, so you're going to see me dump that out at some point in time. There's my extras. Yeah, clippers, like a good lopper, a little guy for leaves. Also have something to put in the kitchen sink so I don't lose any of the bark because it's expensive and it's still good. So I just throw that in there. Also, every time, because we're on city water here, so every time I water anything, I always use a tap water conditioner. We got it at a pet store. I think you can get it anywhere. Just use a couple of drops. My wife actually stabbed a hole right in the top, so it comes out in a drop instead of coming out in pouring everywhere. Yeah. So filling up the water, make it pretty easy. Take my water conditioner. Like I said, it's just really a few drops in there. It doesn't take a lot at all. It says 1 milliliter for 10 gallons. So I'm definitely not there. I think this is a 3-gallon pot. Yeah. My limiting factor when I'm watering all my stuff is filling this baby up. Because I can fill all my pots, I can dump out, but it's really the time I'm waiting for something the longest is to fill this up. So I just grabbed some of my orchids. Like I said, everything's real dry. You know, pick it up and kind of feel them. The more you play with them, the more you pick them up, the more you'll know what I'm talking about. You know, some of our stuff's in ceramic. Most of it is just in the nursery pots that they came in because they seem to work great. So all I'm doing really is just essentially watering it, but I have them in a second pot. So we're going to fill them up, let them soak for a while. Like I said, about 15 minutes. Doesn't really have to be exact. If you feel like your plants are still really wet after 2 weeks or a week or whatever your cycle is, then don't soak them as long, I guess. So after I get everything filled with water, I got it right up to the edges. I just kind of go around and poke everything down, poke all the soil down, make sure the top of it's getting wet. It's not so important on the first watering because they went in dry and I watered over the top of everything. But you'll see when I put the second round or third round into these same pots, which don't yell at me, I know cross-contamination, yada yada, it's a thing, but this is how I've been doing it for 20 years. Once we get a dry pot in there, the top's going to be really dry. It's going to try to float, so we have to push everything down. So go around, poke everything. I also like to take this time to trim up anything brown, anything yellow. I've tried cutting leaves in half and then it just keeps getting brown all the way through. So I'd like to go back to the base, just cut them and go. Just kind of walk my way around everything I have in front of me. Looks like quite a few of these need to be repotted at some point in time. Like, yay, who's going sideways instead of up and out, but I just feel bad because every time I cut his bloom off, he shoots another spike out the side of the existing stem, so let him keep going. You can see this one here does have quite a bit of yellow in it. Yeah, so this one here, you can see it's got quite a bit of yellow on him. Not super happy with life. Something's going on. We'll figure it out. But in the meantime, we just cut off anything yellow. That's one trick I learned from my dad, along with literally everything else I know. If it looks like it's going to die, cut it, and it'll look great. You can make a really ugly plant look really pretty by just cutting off all the dead pieces. So while I have it out, this one here is my Darwin orchid. It has a scientific name that will be put in this video at some point in time. This is the Darwin's orchid. So in talking about just cutting it down and starting from zero, about 6 months ago, I soaked this in water and I was covered in ants. A full ant colony had made its way in here, including all its eggs, everything. So just covered. I had a little mini freak out, ran outside with the whole situation and just set it out on my front deck, not realizing what would then happen because I took a plant that's been living indoors its entire life and put it outdoors in direct sunlight. So I burned all of the leaves and again just had a little mini panic and cut all the leaves off, which is how I was left with two little stumps. One of its babies from a long time ago is doing great. So this is actually what they look like when they're bigger. It's dirty. Needs a good washing. So after I cut everything down, I just repotted it, gave it some fresh soil. 6 months later, it seems to have survived. So don't be afraid to cut and start over again. So I do have one orchid that I can't move around with me. It actually lives up on top of our closet here in an old juice jug. Juice jug? What do you call that?
I don't know, like a serving pitcher?
Yeah, it lives in a serving pitcher. So what I do is I just fill that one up, let it sit for 15 minutes, and then just drain it out the bottom. Works pretty well. It does not get a lot of air movement inside a solid glass piece. So what I did is I took a infuser from a juice pitcher to the little center core piece, and I shoved it in the middle so that the center is hollow. Gets tons of air, dries out just as quickly as everything else. Only sketchy part is I'm on a ladder. Just keep your balance. So just like the other orchids, I'm gonna let that sit for about 15 minutes and then open the spigot up and drain it out. So we're at 15 minutes. Time to start swapping them out here. So I'm just gonna pull them out, let them drip off for a minute. Don't really worry about that too much because I just throw it back in its saucer. I'm going to set it out on the counter for the next round then. So we all have our friends that help us water as we go. Mine's down there. She normally lays in the way, but now she decided to lay on her bed and chew on her bone. She's a good girl. So now we have pots filled with water with no plants in them. So this round gets a little bit weird, especially if you're using ceramic pots, because as soon as you let go, that ceramic pot's going to drop to the bottom. Your whole plant's going to be floating on top. But it seems to work. Don't know. I guess I don't know what else to say about that. So I like to just kind of set them in there. Let them slowly float down as they fill with water. And then once I've got them all kind of started, I'm going to go back and just poke at them. Poke the soil down, make sure everything's wet. This is truly why I have the saucer underneath it, because this is when I make the biggest mess. So just kind of push the whole guy down, pot and all. And then I'm going to go back through and top everything off with water. Because like I said, I want this soaked from the top to the bottom. But you can see now there's a ton of dry soil floating on top that no matter how long I let it sit there, it's never going to get wet. So just start poking around. Get your hands in there, poke it down. It's a good way to see how solid everything is. And check the health of your plant. This one I've definitely let get way too dry. It is not happy with me. But we'll see how it does next time. Let's push it down, everything floats. Push everything down. When I first started taking care of plants, I was always really nervous about it. Kept thinking I was going to hurt them. Realized they're a lot more resilient than I think they are. Started messing with them a lot more. Poking them, bending them, kind of realizing that they'll do whatever you want them to do within reason. So you can kind of modify it however you want. So this orchid here actually has 3 shoots. I keep trying to cut this one off, but it just won't give up. It just keeps going. You can see I gave him some support. This is one that we bought. This is one that was made. I believe this is just a simple shish kebab skewer. We bent and opened up a little bit so we could just hook it in there. Yeah, that's exactly what that is, isn't it? Probably not great adding a little iron to the soil, but doesn't seem to be hurting it too badly, so I'm just going to keep on going. Nice thing about orchids is they're not terribly sensitive. As long as you give them water and sunlight, they'll keep on thriving.